The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with silence. Hundreds of alien species sat in their seats, watching and waiting. The Karathi ambassador stood at the center podium, her blue scales dull with exhaustion, her voice breaking as she begged for help. "Please," she said, "our world is dying. The Valoran Empire has surrounded our planet for 18 months. Our children are starving. Our cities are burning. We have only 47 ships left. Without help, we will be gone within the week." The council members looked at each other, but no one spoke. This was how it always went. The Valorans were too strong, too dangerous. No one wanted to risk their own people to save another species. Ambassador Alina Morris sat in the human section, her hands folded in her lap. She was 53 years old, with dark hair that had started to turn silver and brown eyes that had seen too many of these meetings. For 20 years, she'd watched this council debate and discuss and ultimately do nothing while civilizations burned. The High Counselor, a tall being named Tarnik, with 4 eyes and gray skin, cleared his throat. "We have heard the Karathi plea. The Council will now vote on a humanitarian aid package, including food supplies and medical equipment." Alina knew what that meant. They would send food to a planet that would be conquered before the supplies arrived. It was a way to feel good about doing nothing. She stood up. The movement was small, but in the silent chamber, everyone noticed. Human ambassadors rarely spoke. For 300 years, humanity had stayed neutral in all galactic conflicts. They traded with everyone, fought with no one, and kept their opinions to themselves. "The chair recognizes Ambassador Maurice of the United Human Coalition," Tarnik said, surprise clear in his voice. Alina walked to the center podium. The Karathi ambassador stepped aside, looking at her with confusion and desperate hope. "Thank you, High Counselor," Alina said. Her voice was calm and steady. "I will be brief." She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching her. Some were curious. Some were bored. None of them expected what was coming. "For 300 years, my people have watched. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have seen peaceful worlds conquered and their people enslaved. We have seen this council meet and talk and debate while millions died. And we have done nothing." A few council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "We told ourselves that it was not our fight, that we were too young, too weak, too far away. We told ourselves that neutrality was wisdom, that staying out of other people's wars was the right thing to do." Lena placed her hands on the podium and leaned forward slightly. "We were wrong." The chamber was completely silent now. Even the translators seemed to be holding their breath. "Today, the United Human Coalition is formally declaring war on the Valoran Empire. Our full military force will be deployed to the Karathi system within 72 hours. Any Valoran ship that does not withdraw will be destroyed." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some were outraged. Some were confused. Some were laughing, thinking it must be a joke. The Valoran ambassador, a large reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes, was screaming something about insults and consequences. Tarnik banged his staff on the floor, trying to restore order. Silence. Silence. It took nearly 5 minutes for the chamber to calm down. When it did, Tarnik turned to Alina with a strange expression on his face. "Ambassador Maurice," he said slowly, "perhaps you do not understand the situation. The Valoran Empire has over 600 warships surrounding the Karathi homeworld. According to our records, humanity has a defense fleet of approximately 80 vessels. You are proposing to attack a force that outnumbers you nearly 8 to 1. Alina smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something in it that made several nearby delegates uncomfortable. "High Counselor," she said, "your records are somewhat out of date." She touched a control on the podium, and a holographic display appeared in the air above her. It showed a star map of human territory with small dots representing ships. When humanity first made contact with the galactic community, we were a small species with a handful of colony ships. You welcomed us. You taught us. You showed us the wonders of faster-than-light travel and energy shields and plasma weapons. The dots on the map began to multiply. You also showed us the Valoran Empire. You showed us how they conquered the Thesan worlds, how they enslaved the Mirathi colonies, how they burned the Outer Rim settlements. And you showed us how the Council responded each time with debates and discussions and humanitarian aid packages. The dots kept multiplying. Hundreds of them, then thousands. So we prepared. The final count appeared on the display. 1,217 warships, carriers, battlecruisers, destroyers, support vessels. A fleet larger than anything the galaxy had seen in 500 years. The chamber was silent again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. This was the silence of beings who had just realized that everything they thought they knew was wrong. The Valoran ambassador stared at the display, his yellow eyes wide. "This is impossible," he said. "Our intelligence services have monitored human space for centuries. You cannot have hidden a fleet of this size." Lena turned to face him directly. "Ambassador, your intelligence services saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Small patrol ships, outdated weapons. A species more interested in trade than war." She paused. "We have been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Every shipyard, every factory, every mining operation, all of it building toward today." She turned back to the Council. "The Karathi people asked for your help, and you offered them food for a funeral. Humanity offers them something else. We offer them a future." Alina stepped away from the podium and walked back toward her seat. Halfway there, she stopped and looked at the Karathi ambassador, who was standing frozen with tears running down her blue-scaled face. "Tell your people to hold on," Alina said softly. "Help is coming." The Karathi ambassador opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She simply nodded, her whole body shaking. Alina returned to her seat as the chamber erupted into chaos once again. Delegates were shouting, arguing, demanding explanations. The Valoran ambassador was screaming threats into his communicator, but Alina did not hear any of it. She was looking at a small photograph she kept in her pocket. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, dark hair and a bright smile. The girl had been from a species called the Venthari. 10 years ago, their world had been conquered by the Valorans. Alina had watched the final transmissions, had seen the cities burning, had heard the screams of the dying. The Council had sent humanitarian aid that arrived 3 days after the last. Venthari had been killed. Alina had kept that photograph ever since. A reminder. A promise. No more. She put the photograph away and looked up at the chaos around her. In 72 hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled would arrive at Korathi. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere, she hoped, a little girl with dark hair and a bright smile was finally at peace. Admiral Kevin Shaw stood on the bridge of the carrier, endurance, watching the countdown timer on the main display. In 30 seconds, the largest military operation in human history would begin. He was 61 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair cut short and deep lines around his eyes. He had spent 40 years in the human fleet, starting as a young pilot and working his way up through the ranks. His father had served before him, and his grandfather before that. 3 generations of his family had helped build the fleet that was about to reveal itself to the galaxy. "Admiral, all ships report ready," said Lieutenant Maria Santos from her station. She was young, barely 25, with dark eyes that reflected the glow of her console. "Jump coordinates confirmed. We are go for hyperspace transit." Kevin nodded slowly. "Send the signal. All ships execute jump on my mark." He looked around the bridge at his crew. Some of them looked nervous. Some looked excited. All of them understood that what they were about to do would change everything. Mark. The stars outside the viewport stretched into long lines of light, and then the Endurance was hurtling through hyperspace toward the Karathi system. The journey took 6 hours. Kevin spent most of that time reviewing tactical data and checking reports from the other ships in the fleet. Everything was proceeding according to plan, but he could not shake the tension in his chest. This was the moment his entire life had been building toward. "Admiral, We are approaching the exit point, Maria reported. Karathi system in 2 minutes. Kevin stood up straighter. All hands, battle stations. Raise shields the moment we exit hyperspace. Weapons to standby. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Every person knew exactly what to do. They had trained for this scenario hundreds of times. The countdown reached 0, and reality snapped back into focus as the Endurance dropped out of hyperspace. The first thing Kevin saw was the planet Karathi itself. A blue and green world that reminded him of old pictures of Earth. It was beautiful, but it was surrounded by darkness. The Valoran blockade fleet hung in orbit like a swarm of metal insects. 600 warships arranged in overlapping defensive formations. Contact, Maria announced. Valoran fleet is 200,000 kilometers. Ours ahead. They are aware of our presence and are scrambling to respond. Kevin watched as more human ships dropped out of hyperspace around them. The Endurance was not alone. 200 ships appeared in the first wave, forming up into attack squadrons with smooth precision. Sir, we are receiving transmissions from the Karathi Defense Command, Maria said. They are asking if there has been some kind of mistake. They say their sensors must be malfunctioning because the numbers do not match. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. Tell them their sensors are working perfectly. Behind the first wave, more ships emerged from hyperspace. 300. 400. 500. The space around the Karathi system was filling with human warships. More than anyone had thought possible. On the Valoran flagship, Admiral Vectis watched the tactical display with growing horror. His intelligence reports had assured him that humanity had fewer than 100 combat ships. His entire strategy was based on that information. Now he was watching that number climb past 800 with no sign of stopping. How is this possible? He demanded. Where did they come from? His tactical officer, a younger Valoran with nervous eyes, shook his head. Unknown, Admiral. Our long-range sensors are detecting additional hyperspace signatures. More ships are still arriving. The final count stabilized at 1,217 human warships. They arranged themselves in a perfect crescent formation, facing the Valoran fleet across 200,000 kilometers of empty space. Back on the Endurance, Kevin opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships. This is Admiral Shaw. For 300 years, humanity has prepared for this moment. Our grandparents built the shipyards. Our parents built the ships. We trained for a war we hoped would never come, but always knew was necessary. Paused, looking out at the vast formation of human vessels surrounding him. The Karathi people have suffered for 18 months under Valoran siege. Today, that suffering ends. We will show the galaxy that there is a price for conquest, that there are consequences for cruelty, and that humanity keeps its promises. He switched to the fleet-wide tactical channel. All ships activate weapons systems and prepare for combat operations. Do not fire unless fired upon. Our goal is to end this war, not to start a massacre. Across 1,200 ships, weapon systems hummed to life. Railguns charged. Missile tubes loaded. Targeting computers locked onto Valoran. Vessels and waited for the command that everyone hoped would not be necessary. On the planet below, the Karathi people looked up at the night sky and saw something that made them fall to their knees. For 18 months, that sky had been filled with enemy ships. For 18 months, they had watched and waited for death to come. Now the sky was filled with lights. Hundreds of lights. And every single one of them was there to help. In the capital city, young Karathi mother held her daughter close and watched the lights through the broken window of their shelter. The child was too young to understand what was happening, but she could feel the change in her mother's arms. The tension that had been there for so long was melting away. "What is it, mother?" the child asked. "What are all the lights?" The mother could not speak for a moment. When she finally found her voice, it was barely a whisper. "Those are the humans, little one. They came to save us." The child looked up at the lights with wonder. "Are they angels?" The mother laughed, a sound she had not made in 18 months. "No, child. They are something better. They are friends." Back in orbit, Kevin Shaw waited. The Valorans had not moved yet. They were probably trying to figure out what to do. How to respond to a situation that should have been impossible. He could have attacked immediately. With the element of surprise and superior numbers, he could have destroyed the entire Valoran fleet in hours. But that was not why he was here. Open a channel to the Valoran flagship, he ordered. Maria worked her console. Channel open, sir. Kevin took a deep breath. Valoran fleet. This is Admiral Kevin Shaw of the United Human Coalition. You are surrounded and outgunned. I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully from this system. Release all prisoners, cease all hostile operations, and return to Valoran space. If you do this, no more blood needs to be shed today. He waited. The channel remained silent for nearly a minute. Then the Valoran admiral's voice came through, dripping with contempt. Human, you have made a serious mistake. The Valoran Empire does not retreat. The Valoran Empire does not surrender. You may have more ships than we expected, but you have never fought a real war. Your people are soft, weak. You will break. Kevin nodded slowly. He had expected this response. Then, I suggest you give your crews time to make peace with whatever gods they believe in. Because if you fire on my ships, I will not stop until every Valoran vessel in this system is dust. The channel went dead. Kevin turned to his crew. They are going to test us. They will send a small force to probe our defenses to see if we have the will to fight. When they do, we will show them exactly what humanity is capable of. He sat back down in his command chair and watched the tactical display. The waiting had begun. Somewhere out there, Valoran commander was deciding whether to start a battle that would change galactic history. Kevin hoped they would choose peace. But he was ready for war. The waiting lasted for 4 hours. Admiral Kevin Shaw had not moved from his command chair during that time. He watched the tactical display, studying the Valoran formations. Noting every small movement and adjustment they made, the Valorans were nervous. He could tell by the way their ships kept shifting positions, by the increased communication traffic between their vessels. They had expected to be the hunters today. They had not expected to become the prey. Admiral Lieutenant Maria Santos said, her voice tight with tension. 40 Valoran fast attack ships have broken formation. They are heading directly toward our line at high speed. Kevin leaned forward. Speed. Approximately 0.75 combat velocity. At current course, they will reach weapons range in 12 minutes. Classification. Light cruisers, sir. Standard Valoran intimidation squadron. Their usual tactic is to make high-speed passes, fire a few shots, and see if the enemy will break formation. Kevin nodded. He had studied Valoran tactics extensively. They believed in showing strength, in making their enemies fear them before the real battle began. It was effective against smaller civilizations who had never faced a real military threat. It would not be effective against humanity. All ships hold position, Kevin ordered over the fleet channel. Do not charge weapons. Do not target the incoming squadron. Let them come. On the bridge, Commander Daniel Price turned to look at him with surprise. Daniel was Kevin's tactical officer, sharp-minded man in his early 40s who had helped plan this operation for years. Admiral, if we let them get to weapons range without responding, they will fire on us. Yes, they will. Our forward ships could take significant damage. Kevin met his eyes. I know, but if we fire first, we become the aggressors. Every species in the galaxy will see us as the ones who started this fight. The Valorans are about to make a mistake, Daniel. I intend to let them make it. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Understood, sir. The minutes passed slowly. On the main display, the 40 Valoran ships grew closer and closer. Kevin could see them now through the viewport, tiny points of light against the darkness of space. 10,000 kilometers, Maria announced. They are charging weapons. The bridge crew tensed. Several officers gripped their consoles tightly, fighting the urge to respond. 5,000 kilometers. They are opening fire. Bright beams of plasma shot across the void, slamming into the shields of 3 human destroyers at the front of the formation. The ships shuddered under the impact, but their shields held. Damage report, Kevin said calmly. Forward shields at 62% on the Horizon, 58% on the Valiant, and 67% on the Starfall. No hull damage. No casualties. Kevin stood up slowly. Now we respond. Weapons free on the attacking squadron only. No other targets. I want precise surgical strikes. One ship, one kill. The human fleet came alive. 40 Valoran ships had attacked. 40 human ships responded. Railguns fired, accelerating tungsten projectiles to a fraction of the speed of light. Missiles launched from hidden tubes, their guidance systems already locked onto their targets. Energy weapons added their light to the display. The attack lasted 18 seconds. When it was over, 40 Valoran ships were gone. Not damaged. Not retreating. Gone. Reduced to expanding clouds of metal fragments and frozen atmosphere. The rest of the Valoran fleet watched in stunned silence. Open a channel to the Valoran flagship, Kevin ordered. The face of Admiral Vectis appeared on the screen. His scales had gone pale, his 6 yellow eyes wide with shock. Admiral Vectis, Kevin said, you have just witnessed the destruction of 40 of your ships in response to an unprovoked attack on 3 of mine. I want you to notice something very specific about what just happened. He paused to let his words sink in. We fired 40 times and we hit 40 targets. Not 41. Not 39. Exactly 40. We responded with precisely the force necessary to eliminate the threat and no more. Vectis found his voice. You murdered 8,000 Valoran warriors. Oh, Admiral? You murdered 8,000 Valoran warriors when you ordered that attack. I simply gave them the death you chose for them. Kevin stepped closer to the screen. Now I want you to imagine what happens if I stop being precise. If I stop being proportional, if I decide that the appropriate response to your aggression is the total destruction of your fleet. Vectis said nothing. His eyes flickered to something off-screen. It's probably a tactical display showing the overwhelming human numbers surrounding him. 1,200 ships against 560, Kevin continued. Those are your current odds. But the math is actually much worse than that, because my ships are faster, better armed, and crewed by people who have spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this fight. If I give the order to attack, your fleet will cease to exist within 2 hours. Maybe less. You would not dare, Vectis said, but his voice lacked conviction. I would rather not, Kevin admitted. I take no pleasure in killing. Every Valoran who dies today had a family, had hopes, had dreams. I understand that. But I also understand that 18 months ago, you surrounded a peaceful world and began slowly murdering its people. The Korathi had families too. They had hopes and dreams too, and you destroyed them because you could. He sat back down in his command chair. I am giving you 6 hours to begin withdrawal operations. Pull your ships back to the hyperspace jump points. Release all Korathi prisoners. Leave this system and return to Valoran space. If you do this, the war ends today. Your remaining crews go home to their families. Your empire survives. Vectis leaned forward. And if we refuse, then I will destroy your fleet. Liberate every world you have conquered in the past 2 centuries. And reduce the Valoran Empire to whatever fraction I decide is appropriate. You have seen what my ships can do. You know I am not bluffing. The channel went silent. Kevin could see Vectis conferring with his officers, their conversation hidden from the transmission. After several long minutes, Vectis turned back to the screen. The Valoran Empire does not respond to threats from lesser species. Your demands are an insult to our honor and our heritage. We will not withdraw. Kevin felt a wave of disappointment but not surprise. Pride was a powerful force, and the Valorans had built their entire civilization on the belief that they were superior to everyone else. Then your honor will be your grave marker, Admiral. You have 6 hours to reconsider. After that, there will be no more warnings. He cut the channel and turned to his crew. Stand down from battle stations, but keep weapons ready. Let them think about what they just saw. Maria looked at him with concern. Do you think they will withdraw, sir? Kevin shook his head slowly. Probably not. They have spent too long believing they are invincible. It is hard to accept that everything you thought was true is actually a lie. He stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the distant lights of the Valoran fleet. But I had to give them the chance. When this is over, I want to be able to say that we tried everything possible to avoid more bloodshed. I want history to remember that humanity offered peace, and the Valorans chose war. Daniel moved to stand beside him. And if they attack again? Kevin's expression hardened. Then we stop holding back. 40 ships was a probe. If they come at us with their full fleet, we respond with everything we have. He turned back to the bridge crew. Get some rest while you can. Eat something. Write letters to your families. In 6 hours, we will know whether this war ends with a handshake or a funeral. Either way, I want everyone ready. The crew began to move, some heading to the mess hall, others to their quarters. Kevin remained at the viewport watching the stars and thinking about the weight of the decision that would come. 8,000. Valorans had died in 18 seconds. If the next 6 hours went badly, the number would be much, much higher. He hoped Vectis was smart enough to see reason. But hope, he had learned long ago, was not a strategy. Ambassador Alina Morris could not sleep. She had been trying for 3 hours. Lying in the small bunk in her quarters aboard the Endurance, staring at the ceiling and listening to the hum of the ship around her, the 6-hour deadline was almost over. In less than 40 minutes, they would know whether the Valorans would withdraw or fight. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. She got up and walked to the small viewport in her room. Outside, she could see the lights of other human ships, hundreds of them spread across the darkness like a field of stars. Beyond them, much farther away, the lights of the Valoran fleet waited. A soft chime at her door made her turn. "Come in." Admiral Kevin Shaw entered, still in his uniform but looking tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders carried a weight that had nothing to do with gravity. "I thought you might be awake," he said. "Mind if I sit?" Alina gestured to a chair. "Please. I could use the company." Kevin sat down heavily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They had known each other for 15 years. Ever since Alina had first been assigned to represent humanity at the Galactic Council, in all that time, she had never seen him look this drained. "How are the crews?" she asked. "Nervous? Excited? Scared?" He shrugged. The usual mix before a battle. Most of them have never fired a weapon in anger. All those years of training, and now they are facing the real thing. "Do you think the Valorans will withdraw?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "No, I do not. Vectis is too proud, and his commanders are too scared of looking weak. They will fight." Alina nodded slowly. She had expected that answer. "How many will die?" "On their side? Probably all of them. They cannot win this battle, and they do not know how to surrender." He paused. "On our side, maybe a few hundred. Maybe 1,000. It depends on how desperate they get. 1,000 human lives." Alina thought about the families back on Earth and the colony worlds who would receive messages in the coming days. Messages that started with phrases like, "We regret to inform you," and ended with everything changing forever. "Is it worth it?" she asked quietly. Kevin looked at her with surprise. "You are asking me that? You are the one who stood up in the council chamber and declared war." "I know what I did. I am asking if you think it was the right thing to do." Kevin leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "My grandmother helped build the first shipyard at Titan. She was 70 years old when she died. She spent her last breath telling me that someday humanity would have to stand up, that we could not watch forever while evil spread across the galaxy." He looked back at Alina. "She never got to see this day. Neither did my father or my mother. They all died believing in something they would never witness. And now I am here, and I have to decide if their faith was justified." Alina understood. She had her own ghosts, her own memories of people who had believed in this moment. "Do you remember the Venthuri?" she asked. Kevin's expression darkened. "The species that was wiped out 10 years ago? The Council sent humanitarian aid that arrived after they were already dead. I was there when the final transmissions came through. I watched their cities burn. I heard their people screaming." Lena's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. There was a little girl in one of the videos. She was maybe 7 years old, standing in the ruins of her home, looking up at the sky and asking why no one was coming to help. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, the same one she had looked at in the council chamber. The same little girl with dark hair and a bright smile. I found this picture in the archives later. It was taken before the invasion, when she was still happy and safe. I've carried it with me ever since. Kevin took the photograph gently. He looked at it for a long time. What was her name? Selly. Her name was Selly Venther. Alina took the photograph back. I do not know exactly when she died. Sometime during the bombardment, probably. She was just one child out of billions. Nobody special. Nobody important. Just a little girl who deserved to grow up and have a life. She put the photograph away. That is why I stood up in the council chamber. That is why I declared war. Because there are Karathi children down there on that planet looking up at the sky and asking why no one is coming to help. And this time, someone is. Kevin was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. My grandmother used to say that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its strong, but how it protects its weak. She said that humanity had learned that lesson the hard way, through centuries of our own mistakes and cruelties, and she believed that someday we would have the chance to prove that we had learned it. He stood up and walked to the viewport. 1,200 ships out there. 300 years of building and planning and preparing. Millions of people who dedicated their lives to creating a force that could change the galaxy. He turned back to Alina, and it all comes down to this moment, this choice. Whether we are willing to risk everything to protect people we have never met. A chime sounded through the ship. The 6 hours were up. Kevin touched his communicator. Shaw here. Lieutenant Maria Santos's voice came through, tense and alert. Admiral, the Valoran fleet is moving. They are forming into attack formation and advancing on our position. Kevin closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were hard and determined. Understood. I am on my way to the bridge. He looked at Alina. You should stay here. This is going to be dangerous. Alina shook her head. I started this. I need to see it through. Kevin hesitated, then nodded. Then stay close to me. They walked through the corridors of the Endurance together, passing crew members rushing to their stations. The ship was coming alive around them, every system preparing for battle when they reached the bridge. The main display showed the Valoran fleet advancing in a massive wave. 560 ships, all of them heading toward the human line. Admiral on the bridge, Maria announced. Kevin walked to his command chair and sat down. Alina stood beside him, watching the display. All ships. This is Admiral Shaw. The Valorans have made their choice. They have chosen war. His voice was calm and steady, but there was an edge of steel beneath it. We gave them every opportunity to withdraw peacefully. They refused. What happens next is on their hands, not ours. He took a deep breath. All ships, weapons free. Engage and destroy the enemy fleet. Show them what humanity is made of. The battle for Karathi had begun. Across the human formation, weapons fired. Railguns launched their deadly projectiles. Missiles streaked toward enemy targets. Energy beams carved through the darkness. The Valoran fleet fired back, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. Human ships moved with practiced precision, dodging incoming fire while delivering devastating strikes against the enemy. Alina watched the display as Valoran ship after Valoran ship disappeared. Red dots that represented thousands of lives, blinking out of existence one by one. She thought about Selly Venther. She thought about all the other children who had died because no one had been willing to help them. And she thought about the Karathi children who would live because someone finally had. The photograph in her pocket felt warm. Against her heart, the battle lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. When it was over, the Valoran Sixth Fleet had ceased to exist. 560. Enemy ships had been reduced to debris fields drifting through space. Not a single Valoran vessel escaped. Not because the humans wanted to destroy them all, because Admiral Vectis had ordered his captains to fight to the death rather than surrender. The human fleet had lost 23 ships. 412 crew members had died. Their names would be carved into monuments on Earth and every human colony world. They would be remembered as the first to fall in humanity's first great war. But they had. Admiral Kevin Shaw stood on the bridge of the Endurance, looking at the tactical display that now showed only friendly vessels. The battle was over, but the war was not. Somewhere out there, the Valoran Empire was still waiting, still dangerous, still capable of striking back. Sir Lieutenant Maria Santos said, "We are receiving transmissions from the Korathi planetary government. They are requesting permission to land shuttles on our ships." Kevin smiled tiredly. Permission granted. Tell them they are welcome aboard. 2 hours later, the Korathi ambassador stood on the bridge of the Endurance. Her name was Senna Korath, and she was the same ambassador who had begged the Galactic Council for help. Her blue scales were still dull with exhaustion, but her eyes were bright with tears. "I do not know how to thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "For 18 months, we waited for help that never came. We watched our people die. We saw our cities burn, and then you appeared like something from our oldest stories." Alina Morris stepped forward. "You do not need to thank us, Ambassador. This is what should have happened from the beginning. This is what the galaxy should have done the moment the Valorans attacked." Senna shook her head. But they did not. They talked and debated and sent supplies that arrived too late. You acted. You risked everything for people you had never met. She reached out and took Elena's hands in her own. Her grip was warm despite the coldness of space. On Korathi, we have a tradition. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can never be repaid. But you try anyway. You spend the rest of your days trying to be worthy of the gift you were given. She bowed her head. The Korathi people will spend the rest of our days trying to be worthy of what humanity did for us today. Over the following weeks, the human fleet spread across Valoran-occupied space. Every world that had been conquered was liberated. Every prison was opened. Every slave was freed. The Valoran Empire, which had seemed unstoppable for 2 centuries, crumbled in less than a month. Without their fleet, they could not hold their territory. Without their territory, they could not feed their war machine. And without their war machine, they were just another species. No stronger or weaker than anyone else, the Galactic Council met in emergency session after emergency session, trying to understand what had happened. Some species were grateful. Others were frightened. A few were angry, feeling that humanity had deceived them by hiding their true strength. 3 months after the Battle of Korathi, Ambassador Alina Morris stood before the Council once again. This time, the chamber was packed. Every delegation was present. Millions of beings across the galaxy were watching the live broadcast. High Counselor Tarnik called the session to order. The Council recognizes Ambassador Morris of the United Human Coalition. Lena walked to the central podium. She looked around at the hundreds of faces watching her, some friendly, some hostile, all uncertain. Distinguished members of the Council, she began. 3 months ago, I stood in this chamber and announced that humanity was going to war. Today, that war is over. The Valoran Empire has been reduced to its original borders. Every conquered world has been freed. Every prisoner has been released. She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly. I know that many of you have questions. You want to know why we hid our fleet for so long? You want to know why we stayed neutral while the Valorans conquered world after world? You want to know if you can trust us? Oh, she touched a control, and a holographic display appeared above her, showing a timeline of galactic history. For 300 years, humanity watched this council fail to protect the innocent. We watched the Thesan fall. We watched the Mirathi suffer. We watched the Venthri die. And every time, we heard the same excuses. It is too dangerous. It is too expensive. It is not our problem. The display shifted to show the Liberation Fleet arriving at Korathi. We prepared in secret because we knew that if we showed our strength too early, we would become a target. We stayed neutral because we needed time to build a force capable of ending the threat permanently. And we waited 300 years because we wanted to be certain that when we finally moved, we could win. She stepped away from the podium and looked directly at the assembled delegates. But we did not do this to conquer anyone. We did not do this to become rulers of the galaxy. We did it because watching innocent people die while you have the power to help them is a kind of cowardice we could not live with. Lena returned to the podium. The United Human Coalition proposes the formation of a mutual defense alliance. Any species that joins agrees to one simple principle. An attack on one is an attack on all. We will share our technology. We will share our training. And we will stand together against any force that threatens peaceful worlds. Tarnik leaned forward. And what happens to species that choose not to join? Nothing, Elena said. We will remain your neighbors and your trading partners. We will not force anyone to accept our protection. But we will also not go back to watching in silence while empires devour the helpless. The Karathi ambassadors stood up. The Karathi people formally request membership in the Mutual Defense Alliance. One by one, other delegations rose. The Mirathi, the Thesan remnants, the Outer Rim colonies, dozens of species who had lived in fear for centuries, finally seeing a path to safety. Not everyone joined. Some species remained seated, their expressions unreadable. The Valorans, reduced to a handful of representatives, glared at Alina with barely concealed hatred, but as Alina watched the chamber fill with standing delegates, she felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. After the session, she walked back to the human delegation's quarters. Admiral Kevin Shaw was waiting for her, watching the celebration through a window. "You did it," he said. "You changed everything." Lena stood beside him. "We did it. All of us. Everyone who built those ships, everyone who trained those crews, everyone who believed that someday we would have to stand up." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the photograph of Sally Venthor, the little girl with dark hair and a bright smile. "I've been carrying this for 10 years, she said. "I looked at it every time I started to doubt whether what we were doing was right." Kevin looked at the photograph. "What will you do with it now?" Alina thought for a long moment. Then she walked to a small table where a memorial candle was burning. Placed there by the crew to honor the humans who had died in the battle, she set the photograph beside the candle. "I am going to leave it here," she said, "as a reminder, not of what we lost, but of why we fought. Why we will keep fighting." She stepped back and looked at the candle flame reflecting off the photograph. "No more Celis," she said quietly. "That is our promise. No more children asking why no one is coming to help. From now on, someone always will be." Outside the window, the stars burned steadily on. Somewhere out there, millions of beings were waking up to a galaxy that was finally, after centuries of darkness, beginning to change. The humans had lit a match. And across the universe, the fire was spreading. On a freed Karathi world, a young mother held her daughter close in tea.